My name is Lori Bosch. I have been at the Bridge for about 6 years. This is my story of my life transformation. My life growing up, I was raised in the Catholic Church. I spent every Sunday going to Mass and once a week going to Mass with my classmates. I learned so much about my religion, but I do not recall anything being said about relationship with Jesus. My childhood was good with my parents. I'm the oldest of 5. I did spend a lot of time alone growing up because I had 2 brothers right after me that drove me nuts, so I elected to spend a lot of time by myself in my bedroom, just playing with my dolls, doing my own thing. I had good friends going through my grade school years. When I entered high school, things changed, and I didn't cope well with that change. I felt very alone and unheard. I was scared of what was changing in my life, and I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know how to express that. So I started making some choices that were not so healthy for myself. I ended up going to 3 different high schools, and in the process, through my junior and senior year, I just kind of started going from one guy to another because I was so desperate to be loved, desperate to be wanted or desired, and I desperately wanted to belong to something. So even though I was part of a large family, I did not feel like part of that family because I had spent so much time by myself. So my late teens and my 20s were a very sad time, a very desperate time. I imagine anyone who knew me then and who knew the Lord then looked at me and just saw how very hurting I was. I did go from one relationship to another, and they never lasted very long. And at the end of each relationship, I was heartbroken and devastated. I still felt completely alone, completely unloved, completely undesired, and I just didn't know what to do. There was one time when I was about 30, a relationship ended, like all the other ones, and I hit my knees on my bathroom floor, and I just gave it all to God. I cried out to Him, and I just said, I can't do this anymore, God. I've tried it my way, and it is not working, and I need you. So in that moment, I gave my life to Christ, and God is so good. Through all those years, I had an aunt and uncle who had left the Catholic Church. All my family was Catholic. My mom's family, my dad's family, all of them Catholic, except for my one aunt and uncle who had left the Catholic Church and started going to the Vineyard Church up in Cincinnati, a non-denominational Christian church. So after that moment in my bathroom, when I gave my life to Christ, I called my aunt and I asked if I could start going to church with her and her family. Of course, she said yes. So I started going to church with them, and it's hard to find the word that describes what that's like. I mean, amazing, wonderful, all those things. You can't, it was being in that church environment, worshiping the Lord. I just felt, I knew like I needed to be there, like I was supposed to be there. And there was a great church, great teaching. I got into a small group there, and I learned so much. The folks in that group poured into me. I was a brand new baby Christian, and I learned so much from that group. I also learned so much from my aunt and uncle and my cousins. We would go out to eat after church and talk about the sermon and talk about the Bible. Growing up, I had never opened the Bible except to do my religion homework. So I knew like where some things were in the Bible, but I never really spent time reading it, and I didn't understand that it was God's love letter to me. But once I started going to church at the Vineyard with my family, I started learning that the Bible was there as God's love letter to me and to help guide me through my life. Somewhere along the way, I felt God put on my heart to go to a church closer to home. I was living in Covington at the time. So I found a small Vineyard church closer to home, started going there, and I got very involved volunteering there. I was on the prayer team and women's Bible study, stuff like that. So I spent a lot of time with folks there, and again, just growing. I was growing by leaps and bounds. It was amazing. And probably like so many others, I did have stuff happen in my life that took me by surprise. It was unexpected, and I found myself wandering off my path with Jesus. And then didn't have a church home for a little while. And I came back to a friend of mine asking about a church I could go to. I had a daughter then at the time, and I wanted a church with a good children's ministry. So she suggested the Bridge. That was when the Bridge was still meeting in the warehouse down on Wilder. So I headed there, and as soon as I walked in and the worship started, I knew I was home. I looked around, and I was so impressed with the different people that were in that church. There were young people. I sat next to a lady who was as old as my grandpa that first Sunday I was there. And then everything in between. And I could tell that, people came from different backgrounds. I was in Campbell County, where there's plenty of rural families still and city. And it was just amazing to me because I felt like the Bridge really encapsulated what the church family should look like. I got into a group then after a few months, and it wasn't a life group because we didn't do life groups at the time. It was a connect group, and we clicked very well. And then we decided to keep doing one study after another. And we eventually became a life group. We stayed together for years. I went through some really bad anxiety when I was with those ladies. And God showed me in that time where all that anxiety was coming from. I had a lot of unforgiveness toward my mom. She had spoken some things over me that were very, very, very hurtful. And I had never forgiven her for that. I also had bitterness in my heart toward my daughter's dad. And all of that just kept bubbling up inside me. And then eventually, I was on the floor, just wrecked with anxiety. The ladies in my group loved on me and prayed for me, and God showed me so much through that time. One of the ladies in my group started speaking God's truth over me somewhere even before all of this anxiety. She kept telling me what a miracle I was. The hurtful things that had been spoken over me when I was younger eventually were pushed out because that truth that was poured into me. And I think having grown up without that relationship with Jesus and being so dysfunctional in relationships, it took having that kind of healthy relationship for me to start really understanding that that was how Jesus saw me and that I could have that kind of a relationship with him. That life group, I'm now co-leading that group, and those ladies are my sisters. I love them so much. I focused so much when I was younger on finding the right guy. I never paid attention to having good friends, and God is just so good that, he does abundantly more than we ask. I never asked for friends, female friends, but God gave me an amazing group of women friends who I love so much, who I trust with all of my junk, and who I love celebrating all of our victories together. It's been amazing, and I can sense what God has done in me. I finally can. It took a while to really be able to look at myself and see all that God has done. He really has done so much. I no longer feel like I'm not loved. I know that I am loved by Jesus so much. Every day, there are just so many ways I can see how loved I am by him. I no longer feel completely lonely or desperate, and I definitely now feel like I am part of something. I am a part of my life group. I'm part of the Bridge Church, and I am part of the bigger C church of the world. And so all those feelings, those desperate feelings of loneliness and not being loved, those are gone, and God has replaced them with his truths, his love, and his people.